Coming at number 10, we have hunting patterns. Early humans had a lot of different techniques that they could use to make sure that they were the ones on top of every creature. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have been able to get to the point where we don't have to hunt anymore, and we're talking about cloning meat. Some of those factors were that humans can hunt in groups, that they can make weapons, and that they can throw spears over hands. All of these things were advantages over early hominids, but the most terrifying of all of them was the fact that early humans could run animals to death. A skill that humans have over other creatures is the ability to run long distances for extended periods of time. Other animals are much better sprinters, but something that separates us is the ability to run marathon lengths or longer. So a way humans would hunt would be to chase down its prey and have it sprint away, while humans were just jogging. When the animal thinks it's safe, it might relax for a moment, but then it would see humans approaching again, so it would sprint away again. The prey would once again settle down and then see humans running from far away. Early humans would literally run its prey to exhaustion because most animals don't sweat, so they overheat, collapse, and then become food. This process would sometimes take days.
Number 9, Robert Liston. In the early 19th century, crowds would gather. They would gather to watch Dr. Robert Liston work. Yeah, he was known as the fastest knife in the West. I know, how many red flags can you find already in this one? A crowd? A fast surgery? What? What's going on? This was a time before anesthesia had been developed, so you wanted things wrapped up quickly, pun intended. He would have you amputated and sutured in 3 minutes or less. Nice. 1 in 10 would pass away, but this was a time where those were good odds, until it wasn't. Robert attempted to beat any record previously held that during a surgery, he accidentally cut off his assistant's fingers by accident, as well as the, patient's leg. But wait, it gets worse. Yeah, when he was swinging away, he also accidentally hit somebody else watching. Remember how I said crowds would gather at the old surgery crowd? Yeah, this is why you don't stand close. It's kind of like crump battles, you can't get too close. Disaster is waiting in there. You don't want to get smoked with a timberland. I'm glad surgeons are taking their time now. I'm also glad no surgeons are trying new experiments at a record time. That's also nice too. Number 8, the monster study. Speech pathologists, I have admiration for your profession. You all are amazing. You're literally miracle workers. Back in 1939, speech pathologists at the University of Iowa were determined to crack the secret behind stuttering. Yeah, they believed that it all began with young adults and their fear of public speaking. So these researchers decided to just intimidate people and try and induce stuttering. Like, oh no, don't do, why? They got patients who were showing signs of stuttering and they verbally attacked them. They kept telling them that they shouldn't speak unless they're sure they can do so properly on the first shot. I'd be like, no, get lost. That's confident, no. The experiment did not induce stuttering, it just induced anxiety and aggression and anger and confusion. 3 of these patients later sued Iowa and the university for $925,000. Number 7, Jose Delgado. Okay, we're talking mind control now, so I'll give you a moment to put on your tinfoil hat. In the early 1900s, Jose Delgado graduated from the University of Madrid. He even lands a professorship at Yale University. Guy's killing it, but his mind was focused on others' minds. He was committed to mind control. His go-to method was these implants, like electrode implants with wires. He first used it with primates, as you could have guessed, horrible classic. He would use a remote control to make them do certain moves, even moving on to mind controlling a bull. Yeah, he got in the ring with said mind controlled bull, but then oddly enough, the bull was calm. Weird. Almost like there's an implant in his brain and he's confused and doesn't want anything to do with that. Huh, how did he do it? Genius. Reports say that he stopped the bull last second before it charged at him. I say there's a thing in his head and he wasn't sure what was up. That's my vote. Poor thing. And then next, as you could have guessed, came the people. 25 people were tested with this mind control device by electronically controlling the brain. He believes armies could be controlled down the road. And until his death in 2011, he was upset. Yeah, he was upset he wasn't cited as often in terms of mind control projects in recent studies. Like, guy who mind control animals in the 1900s. Yeah, we're trying not to do that anymore. Maybe. Thanks. Number 6, Ilia IVanov. In the late 1800s, another old weird experiment with animals was underway. Here we go. Soviet biologists, they actually got permission from the country to breed hybrid ape humans. Yep. What did you get up to last summer? Oh, let me tell you, my friends. Horrible. Who does this? This is crazy. Who thinks of this? They grafted an ovary into a chimp and the goal was to fertilize Nora, the chimp, with human DNA. Nightmare. So they inseminated a group of chimps. None of them got pregnant, obviously, so instead they tried to flip the project around. This time they had a human inseminated with the DNA of chimps. The volunteer number was obviously low. Luckily, nothing actually happened. This would have been an absolute train wreck. Before the project went underway, he was sent to Kazakhstan, and he thankfully didn't go up to any more science projects at that point. No mixing DNAs, nothing's going around. We're good. We dodged that bullet, but we got close. Number 5. William Buckland, late 1700s, contemporary of Charles Darwin himself. Yeah, William Buckland, historically, he made some Jurassic waves. He was the first man to write a description of a fossilized dinosaur. He's into weird stuff, I guess. He's unfortunately also known for weird stuff more than, the dino discovery stuff. William Buckland would eat some strange dishes, all in the name of, science and discovering new things with DNA. They were bored, I guess. He roasted hedgehogs, ostriches, panthers, bats, he ate everything. Like, I get it, it was the late 1700s, but eating these animals as often as he did, plus his brains, now we gotta ask some questions. What's going on? What's the end game here, my guy? One of the most bizarre things that he studied up close and personal was the heart of King Louis XIV. Yeah, the way these scientists would handle tasks like old school testing, not ideal. Actually quite gross. Number 4, Francis Crick. Here we go. Before we get really, really dark here with the science and health studies and stuff, we need to mention aliens. You heard me. Tinfoil's on already. We're good. In the early 1900s, Francis Crick, the guy who discovered DNA alongside James Watson, two brilliant minds, dare I say life-changing discoveries, they also believed in directed transparency, meaning that humans were put on this planet by aliens. Yeah, like extraterrestrials, like actual, aliens, like another species planted us here on purpose, like a science project. Yeah, scientists believe that they are a science project. Some of his methods, conversations to patients, were obviously quite sketchy with these beliefs in order. Hey, let's talk about DNA. I'm brilliant. Also, did you know aliens left you here? Great, have a great day. Here's your bill. It's a lot of money. It's really old. Number 3, John Bodkin Adams. He was once a general practitioner in the British community in Essex, and most of his patients were unfortunately elderly. And he treated said elderly patients with care. Now, there's obviously more. It gets dark. From 1946 to 1956, John had around 160 patients that all suspiciously died, and out of those 160, 132 of them just happened to leave valuables over for him. Yeah, he ended up dying a very rich man. What are the odds? Must have been some great care he was providing, eh? Not fishy at all. Of course, the wills were later found out to be fraudulent because, well, as per this list, it was the worst of the worst. And the worst part of all this, John was acquitted after everything. Yeah, his trial established that the doctrine of double effect, which is where a doctor giving treatment with the aim of relieving pain, may lawfully, as an unintentional result, shorten their life. So they're like, oh, it sometimes happens, so we can't punish him. Yeah, no, look at the numbers here. So out of the dozens of cases that ended horribly, Adams was only charged for 2. And he wasn't even convicted of their deaths even. He was just guilty of forging prescriptions and falsifying medical forms. He even reopened his practice. Yeah, although he was fined. He was fined only £2,000. The general public knew he had taken the lives of at least 8 people, so he didn't do much after that. But like I said, he ended up passing away rich at the age of 84. Number 2, Morris Bulber. He was once part of the Philadelphia poison ring, which, yep, already you're like, oh, number 2, we're already here. Here we go. Yeah, that was a real thing. How horrible does that sound? The Philadelphia poison ring. Okay, it was led by these 2 Italian cousins. It was led by Paul and Herman Petrillo. This was back in the 1930s. And these 2 brothers, these 2 bros, they were perfect for each other in a horrible, dark, disgusting way. Harold was the arson who knew how to make counterfeit money, and Paul ran an insurance scam out of the back of his tailor business. So already this awful duo exists, and then in comes Morris Bulber, this Jewish-Russian immigrant who believed in something called La Fatura, this magical practice that Italians from South Philadelphia believed in at the time. So bad, and then in comes crazy science, medical magic, just to make it better. Yeah, just add some spirit fingers into this horribleness. So Dr. Bulber would come in and give potions to patients, specifically patients from these cousins that they issued insurance policies from without medical exams. So they got this Dr. Bulber to then poison them with arsenic. The reason they had this scheme was because their insurance policies paid out the gang rather than the now widowed wives. How sad is that? This kicked off around 1931, and roughly 50 people bit the bullet before he was thankfully arrested in 1939. And yes, he turned the evidence over, so those 2 cousins were also equally found guilty. Yeah, everyone's sentenced to death here. And finally, number 1, Dr. Satan. There's a fun little nickname, Dr. Satan. Yeah, let's talk about this guy. Marcel Petiot. It all started when he was young, as most of these do. He would get expelled from school, he had trouble with other students, and his first adult crime, was mail fraud. Reminder, this was the early 1900s. Marcel was actually found to be mentally unfit to stand on trial after he was arrested, so later he joined the army. Yeah, that's the real sentence. That's the order that things happen in. The army later discharged him after he was caught stealing blankets, and come 1921 he decided to get a degree. Yeah, he began practicing in France, and at the same time in 1926 he became the mayor. Yeah, we have a medical doctor and mayor all at the same time in the early 1900s. This sounds like a Tim Burton movie already. I'm already nervous. The guy loses his spot as a mayor because he stole power from the city. Yeah, he stole power from the city, like a real villain, right? And in 1933 his crimes became historically horrible. YouTube doesn't like us talking about Hitler and the Yazis, but we'll rhyme them, we'll outrhyme the algorithm. This is history, we gotta talk about it. Marcel would talk to Jewish residents while World War II was unfolding, and he would lie. He would say that he's going to assist them by injecting them with what he said was medicine, but after they'd passed away, he would steal all their belongings and dispose of their bodies in the basement. It's horrible. It's perhaps one of the worst things I've ever heard of. Come 1943, he was thankfully arrested, and after the liberation of Paris, he was found guilty for killing over 60 people. And in 1946, he finally met his fate via the guillotine.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Neanderthals. Turns out that humans used to get it on with Neanderthals. Back in the 90s, as researchers were studying the Neanderthal genome, they discovered something pretty odd. Specific genes of the Neanderthal look similar to human genes. They figured out that this is because humans and the Neanderthals were getting freaky together back then. In particular, men were getting it on with female Neanderthals. However, they believed that it was pretty rare for this to happen and it only happened sporadically. The mystery that remains is why. Was it to satisfy their impulses, or at one point were they capable of loving each other?
Number 9 on this list is Reptile Hearts. Let me paint you the picture here, folks. You're chilling out at your home, everything is good. It's just a typical day in your 59-year-old male life. Boom, your chest starts to feel a bit strange, then it starts to get worse. The pains are significant right now and you think, holy mother of God, am I having a heart attack? You rush to the hospital just praying that you make it there in time and that your heart can hold on until then. You get there, but once you do, you get a very surprising report. The good news is that you aren't suffering from a heart attack and that death isn't totally imminent. The bad news is that you're slowly turning into a snake. Well, at least your heart is doing that. This is literally exactly what happened to a 59-year-old man. How this happened, why this happened, and what we can do to prevent it are all things that doctors truly don't know. In truth, this was only the second time that this has ever reportedly happened. Now, it's very possible that it's happened to other people and just hasn't been reported yet, but either way, it's still super rare. Being a snake would definitely be pretty cool, but I think I'd like to stick with my human heart if that's alright. Number 8 on this list is multiple breasts. Having 2 breasts is honestly a pretty unique human thing. Think about all of the other mammals out there that have way more than that. Back in the day, it's believed that we would have evolved from creatures that had way more than 2 breasts. So why did this go away? Well, there really just wasn't any reason to have more than 2. Cats, for instance, have more than that, but they also give birth to multiple offspring at a time, so there's an actual purpose for having them. Humans typically give birth to 1 other human at a time, and in very rare cases, 2. Therefore, having more than 2 breasts just really doesn't make any evolutionary sense. However, the genes are there, we've done it before, and that's why, in rare cases, sometimes it happens again. What's kind of strange is that this mutation is way more common in men than it is in women. And because it's way more common in men, these additional breasts often go unnoticed. The women that do end up with this mutation typically have these extra breasts removed. They can't really decide where these things pop up, and having a breast growing in your armpit has got to be pretty uncomfortable. Number 7 on this list is ectrodactyly. This is commonly known as a split hand or split foot mutation. Middle fingers or middle toes will usually be affected, and in some individuals, literally all 4 hands and feet can be hit with it. This sucks for everybody who has to deal with it, but especially those who have all their limbs affected. It's gotta be brutal. Think about having to walk around or grab things like this. You can't. You wouldn't be able to. How are you supposed to drive a car or text on a phone or literally walk properly if it's your feet that are affected? This should affect people at birth, so if you don't have it right now, then you should be okay. Number 6 on this list is the proteus syndrome. Proteus syndrome is a rare condition which will affect your bones, your skin, your muscles, and literally all other tissues in the body. This mutation is really very scary, and I feel for those who it affects. Basically, parts of your body will grow at a proportion to the rest of your body. This mutation is also asymmetric, so you may have your left leg get really big, but your right leg stays at a normal size. This syndrome can also affect literally any part of your body too. Your face, nostrils, legs, arms, ears, you name name it, and if you have this mutation, they might just get really big. This mutation obviously makes it very difficult for those individuals to live everyday normal lives and will often be struggling with it forever. It also makes it far more likely to develop tumors and some skin conditions that your everyday individuals usually don't need to worry as much about. If you're watching this video and you don't already have it, then you're probably good unless you're between the ages of 6 months and 18 months. That's when you typically notice the growth, and from there on out, it's just going to continue with age. Number 5 on this list is hypertrichosis. Ever wondered what it's like to be the teen wolf? Well, if you develop this mutation, then this is probably as close as you're going to be able to get. Basically, this mutation is excessive hair growth. We're talking like serious levels of hair here, guys. Not just a scruffy beard, but full-on locks growing out of your cheeks and everything. For a very long time, you'd often see people who had this disease working in the circus. Julia Pastrana is one of the most famous ones. She was born in Mexico in 1834 and made a name for herself in the circus community, becoming a performer and showing off her mutation. And honestly, shout out Julia. I have to imagine that it's very difficult being born with something like that, but Julia went out there, made the best out of a bad situation, so honestly, solid respect. Number 4 on this list is unortan syndrome. So this mutation is super specific, and right now the scientific community is still trying to decide whether it's an actual mutation or if people are just trying to punk us. Let me explain. UTS is a syndrome that was proposed by the Turkish evolutionary biologist Unortan after studying 5 members of the Ulis family in rural Turkey. These individuals all walked on all fours, all used primitive speech, and appeared to have congenital brain impairment. It's very strange though, because nobody really knows why this happened. That's why some people in the scientific community have come out and talked about how genetics have absolutely nothing to do with it. But if genetics do have something to do with this, and this is a mutation, then it sounds to me like humans are straight up devolving, losing all connection to our human characteristics and getting closer to dogs or other 4-legged animals. I don't know, guys, this is a weird one. Let me know in the comments what you guys think it could be. Number 3 on this list is Fibro dysplasia ossificans progressiva. Wow, alright, that was a mouthful. Well, for simplicity's sake, and so I don't embarrass myself anymore by mispronouncing this thing, we're gonna call this FOP from here on out. FOP is a very dangerous and rare condition that you do not want to get. This mutation literally causes your muscles and tissues to start to calcify and ultimately turn into bones. Yeah, you heard that right, guys. You literally start to become just a bone. Basically a statue with skin over top of it. As you can imagine, movement can become very limited when you have this mutation, and you'll have some other health issues arise as well. Breathing can be difficult, and it can also become difficult to speak or eat. And that leads to other major problems that I don't even want to get into. This one is scary as all holy hell and really makes me appreciate the ability to move around. Number 2 on this list is Trimethylaminuria. Wow, I swear whoever came up with these names is literally just doing it to mess with us, guys. Alright, this mutation is definitely the stinkiest on this list. People who develop this mutation just literally can't break down certain smells. Their body is incapable, and therefore these smells just sort of come off of their bodies at all times. Sadly, it's not rose petals or apple pie either. Of course, it has to be smells like rotten eggs, garbage, urine. Just absolutely gross smells that will be so overtly pungent that everybody in the room is going to be able to smell it. The worst part is, it doesn't matter how much the person showers or douses themselves in deodorant, they're not going to be able to get rid of this smell. And finally, number 1 on this list is alien hand syndrome. I think that this one is by far the scariest thing on this list, guys. Alien hand syndrome is a mutation where you're literally no longer in control of one of your hands. Your brain can no longer control what your hand does, and it just sort of acts as if it's got a mind on its own. I can't even imagine how scary that would be. Like, imagine you're just driving your car and this alien limb just starts punching you in the nuts sack. That's game over, dude. Like, there's no coming back from that. And this can happen at any age, and usually it comes after a stroke or some other deep trauma. So just kind of cross your fingers that your hand doesn't decide to go haywire on you.
Coming in at number 10, we have the Vampire of Venice. A real vampire skull was discovered on a Venetian island in 2009, and plenty more have cropped up over Europe. When I say vampire skull, I don't mean pointy bitey teeth. I mean a real person accused of being a vampire who had a giant stone shoved in their mouth. This was the custom in the grisly Middle Ages. Ugh. Not a great time to be alive. The remains of the Venice vampire were discovered in a mass grave of plague victims dating back to the 1500s. This stone was to stop the corpse of a woman reanimating and rising to suck blood. It's thought that actually she was mistaken as a vampire when gravediggers came to place more bodies in the mass burial site. Her decomposing body would likely have been emitting purge fluids, which would have made her mouth bloody and make it appear as if she was biting through her burial shroud. A quick stone will stop you right in your tracks there, love.
Number 9. SeeThrough Frog. Yeah, just when you thought frogs were already hard to spot and catch, boom. Now they're invisible, pal. Good luck. Back in 2016, through artificial insemination, scientists successfully took the DNA of 2 kinds of recessive color mutant frogs. They took black-eyed and gray-eyed frogs, and then they did science. That's what they did. They just smacked them together, and they're like, whoa, that was so easy. They combined them together to create a frog whose skin is always translucent. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason for this. It's cool, but there's also a reason. The see-through factor allows observation of organ growth or cancer formation without having to cut into them. You know what I mean? Kind of helps when you can see the problem, right? No dissection needed for further study. That was the goal here. Not bad. But imagine being see-through at all times. I'd be like, hey pal, my eyes are up here, okay? Quit staring at my pancreas. Gotta move on. Number 8. Savannah Cats. This one has been talked about for a while now. It's pretty common, weirdly enough. How do we feel about Savannah Cats? Let's talk about these little critters. In May 2012, the International Cat Association, I want to work there first of all, they registered this Savannah cat as a new official breed. It's official! The international cat community confirmed it. And it all started in the late 80s when Judy Frank crossbred a male several with a domestic Siamese. The offspring was appropriately named Savannah. Yeah. Imagine if I was like, no, it's actually Amanda. I lied to you. They just called them Savannah cats for no reason. In turn, now we have cats with big ears. We did it, folks. We did it. Domestic cats mixed with wild African cats. I mean, it sounds like you're gonna get another cat. And we did. Great work. I don't know how to tell you this. I mean, apparently they're great. They're not too crazy temper-wise, but they're fun and energetic at the same time. Apparently they're great for families. Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying great for families in a list that gets as dark as it's gonna get. Number 7, the Zorse. The Zorse. Yes, the male zebra, female horse. Now we get a really fun word. Zorse. The Zorse. Sorry. It sounds like a god. Yeah, there's Thor, Odin, and then Zorse. Zebroids, that's their scientific name, they're usually quite common historically. Charles Darwin even noted some in his work. So since the 19th century, crossbreeding zebras with horses, donkeys, you name it, has been done. More often than not, and this is what makes them stand out, zebroids will experience dwarfism. So they're very little petite little guys. In 2010, a zedonk was born. It was a zebra donkey, but again, back in the 70s, this happened before, and no one really talked about it. There were 3 born in Colchester Zoo. Yeah, those zookeepers were like, how do we make zoos new and hip? Bizarre. Humans are so weird. They're not too smart, humans. They're like, yeah, let's put these in a cage. It'll be fine. Number 6, bees. I hate bees so much. When windows closed, we're good. Remember when we had to worry about killer bees for a couple months, like a year ago? During an already dark time? Should we still be worried? Are these killer bees coming back? Are they a real thing? Hybrid bees? Those are also, Will hybrid bees fight the killer bees? Can we watch this? Can we tune in and watch this on Triller? An experiment in the 70s tried to change the hashtag bee game, and in turn, we got a brand new bee. Yeah, we love those. Just new bees to dodge outside. The idea at first was to take a regular honeybee and then breed it with an African honeybee. Ideally, we would get a hybrid bee that can safely provide more honey than a regular honeybee. Okay, that's steps. We're going towards the future with this one, right? On paper. The experiment obviously didn't work with these new bees, and they didn't do that at all. And worst part of all, the bees got out. Yeah, imagine that email. To whom it may concern. Oh God, I left the door open, I'm sorry. These bees are aggressive towards other kinds of bees. They're not too nice, they're not too friendly. And they're very aggressive towards humans as well, in case you were wondering. And when these bees sting, their stinger stays with them afterwards, so they can continue stinging multiple times with their stinger butts. Yeah, they don't fall off, right? That's our only hope when we see a bee the size of a tennis ball. We're like, he won't, will he? Will he? I don't think. These bees would. Because they can. Yeah, hybrid killer bees. Victims have received 10 times the amount of stings as regular swarms. It's a lot of stings. It's a lot of movements from the bee's hips there. That's like some Caesar, that's like Julius Caesar numbers right there, that's crazy. They react to disturbances 10 times faster, and they will also chase said disturbance a quarter of a mile to find it. So yeah, don't sneeze. These bees have caused over 1,000 deaths, so yeah, I guess we should worry. We should definitely worry. Hit that thumbs up just because we're like, no, there's no good in this. That's scary, that's so scary. Hit that thumbs up for bee progression. Let's save the bees. Hit the thumbs up for the bees. Let's save all the bees except for those kind. The other ones are good. Number 5, Tigons. Tigons be bygones. Haha. He's good. I was gonna say liger, but that's been used before. We know what that one looks like. Tigons were a real hybrid animal you could see for yourself at both the London Zoo and the Manchester Zoo once upon a time. This was of course back in the late 30s where folks didn't, bat an eye towards these kind of things with animals. Yeah, step on up and see the Tigon. A tiger head, a lion body, and a tiger tail. That's what happens when you put animals in the same cage. Come on out. Well, sometimes they'll get along too well in said cage, and then you'll get a Tigon. Tigon hybrids were seen long before the 90s. Actually, in 1837, Queen Victoria was gifted a Tigon. Imagine that. I wouldn't know what to do with that. I'd be like, hi, what are you? Number 4, Hiramitsu Nakachi. Stem cell biologist from Tokyo. This one is insane. Now we're getting to the dark ones here. Just recently, his experiments have been approved by the government, so things are actively in play here, not just, Farmer Joe in the early 1900s. No, this is modern science. This is some Black Mirror type stuff here. Hiramitsu hopes to grow human cells inside of mice and rats, and then transplant said embryos into surrogate animals. A lot of animals, a lot of cells, a lot of traffic, a lot of moving around, and a lot of science, apparently. Cells into rats and mice embryos. How did we even get here? Who thought of this first? We went from the Salem witch trials to rodents being genetically manipulated so they can make pancreases for themselves. I like the word pancreas. I've been using it a few times lately. But his hope was that the rodent bodies would use the human cells to then make a pancreas for themselves. Here's the thing though, while conducting said experiments, they found that the rats were starting to develop a human type brain. That's when they pulled the plug on that entire project. Yeah, the second humans and animals get too close, governments will come in and go, stop. Number 3, Beefalo. Beefalo sounds like a Pokemon. It sounds like a thing that's close to being real but shouldn't be, and that's where it should have stayed if I'm being honest. The Beefalo should have only been a concept. But then a guy named Charles Buffalo Jones did the impossible. Look at him go. One day in 1906 he said, hey, watch this, and then started breeding Arizona bison with domestic cattle in order to produce a hardy commercial animal, just something new to make some money. He ended up giving up on this project entirely, and then he just released the animals. Yeah, guy just got bored and released science projects to the wilds. What could go wrong? The Beefalo then found their way into a national park where hunting was banned, so they thrived. And they thrived without natural predators at that. The population began to grow by 50% every single year, and at first you're like, wow, we did it. This is like Jurassic Park, but cute. No, their environmental impact was horrible. It was not ideal. They played God. They messed with the circle of life. You eat one bug, then there's a hurricane somewhere else. First off, these guys are very thirsty animals. They can consume 10 gallons of water each trip to a watering hole. They're like that one kid growing up drinking at the water fountain. You're like, guy, save some. Please hurry. I'm so thirsty. Yeah, they drank all the water. Every animal was so thirsty after. They also in said water, so they ruined the entire water park for every other animal involved. Yeah, all bad. Entire ecosystems were messed up at this point. Everybody got thirsty because Charles Buffalo Jones was like, hey, watch this. Let's try something new. Number 2, don't try this at home. Not sure how many times I have to say this, but don't try any crossbreeding at home. Or ever, for that matter. Because things go south, obviously. For example, back in 2010, a woman named Julie Leroy was working as an animal control officer when an owner of a pit bull puppy said that she didn't want to keep her. This is normal. Maybe a kid will come into the picture, maybe the dog's too aggressive, whatever, and then they have to give it back. Okay. When Julie saw the dog, she was in shock. She was like, yeah, I'll take this living animal, first of all. I'm not a monster, thank you, I can do this. People who abandon animals, also, they're the devil. Side note. This dog was different, but it wasn't mean. It was just a hybrid. It wasn't healthy, but all the more reason why you should stick around. Know what I mean? The dog had a squished body, it had a huge jaw, and a bad underbite, and it was oddly shaped. That's because the dog suffered from short spine syndrome. That's because they got the dog from this backyard breeder who was carelessly breeding a bunch of dogs together, just for fun, not really knowing what he's doing. Thankfully, Julie did know what she was doing. She brought the dog home and gave her a loving home. Sweet little thing. Olivia and I want a dog so badly, so you know what? We'll take this hybrid little lady anytime. Her name's Kuda. She's in great hands, but look at her, she's so cute. And finally, number 1, lions. Back in the 80s, the Chatbar Zoo in Chandigarh, India, they tried this fun little science experiment for themselves. Yeah, they tried an experimental program rather, where they would breed together domestic lions, little petite, well, small in terms of a lion. They would mix them with these massive, beastly African lions in the hopes that they would meet in the middle somewhere and be introduced to the wild and help with the dying population of wild lions in India. Again, on paper, we wanted to get involved, we want to help restructure the lives of this animal, but the zoo found 2 African lions that were being used in a circus and then brought them in to breed with their 2 Asiatic lions. And it didn't, obviously it's number 1, it didn't work. When the cubs were born, it was clear that this was already a mistake. The cubs had weak back legs, they were having extreme trouble walking, and as they got older, their immune systems just started to fail faster and faster. By 2000, they'd bred more than 70 of these hybrid lions. That's a lot of projects, a lot of experiments. So they finally decided to stop the program, thankfully, and all the males were given vasectomies in order to stop any further reproduction, which is so odd to me. Like, I'm not a fan of humans at all at this point. They're like, hey, welcome to Earth. Yeah, it kind of sucks, right? It's hot. Okay, cool, we're gonna stop making you now. Cheers. What? Naturally, thankfully, there are laws that prohibit officials from just killing these animals, so now they're just simply waiting for them to die naturally, which is, it's better. It's certainly better, but still, stop messing with nature, guys. How many times do I have to tell you? Stop messing with nature. Kicking off the list at number 10, Stubbons Firth. Okay, this is one of the craziest science projects I've ever heard of in my entire life. Ugh, so gross. Stubbons Firth, a researcher from Pennsylvania in the late 1700s. First of all, as you can probably guess, the 1700s. Methods back then, they got a little messy from time to time. Sure, a lot of firsts in the medical science world back then. Firth was a doctor in training at the time, and he decided to prove to the world that yellow fever was not contagious. Yeah, imagine if you had Twitter. Firth would surgically insert vomit from patients with yellow fever into his own body. He would put it in wounds all over his face, his eyes. He was trying to get it. He was going the extra mile, all in the name of medical research. Thanks, Firth. So gross. Even urine and saliva, anything DNA-wise, anything gross, just pour it in. That's it, all over. Firth, to our surprise, did not get sick. Yeah, he was proud of that one too. He told everybody this new revelation. We look back now though and realize Firth just sampled late-stage patients this entire time. So they were further along, much further than the contagious period. Yeah, no one really knew. So basically, he volunteered to dump all over his Yeah, history is so gross. Science as well. Gets nasty.
In our 9th spot, we have Newgrange. This is a prehistoric site built around 3100 BC. In fact, it is said to be the oldest and most famous prehistoric site in all of Ireland. Basically, it's this really weird round structure made out of wood, clay, and stone. The roof is covered in grass, and inside the structure is a long passage that leads to a cross-shaped chamber. A lot of detail went into this place. It's completely waterproof, and still to this day, and the entrance of the tomb was positioned in a way so that during the winter solstice, the sun would beat in through the opening and down the passage to light it up. Clever, right? Well, we still don't know who this was built for and why. Whoever it was, they had to have been pretty significant. Moving on at number 8, we have eating zebras. I mean, hey, I get it. Back then, you gotta eat whatever you got your hands on, including zebras. This was one of the more common animals that the early humans would hunt and kill. Now, how do we know for a fact that they ate zebras? Good question, my friend. Well, researchers found stone tool marks on zebra bones. The marks looked like they were made when the animal was being butchered up. So 2.6 million years ago, the early humans lived on a diet of zebras. In our 7th spot, we have Gobekli Tepe. Constructed over 11,000 years ago, this landmark located in southeastern Turkey was originally just thought to be the remains of an old cemetery. However, upon excavating the land, they discovered more than 200 pillars in about 20 circles. The pillars are around 20 feet tall and weigh up to 10 tons. Some of the pillars have animal shapes carved into them. And the site isn't even fully excavated yet. It's theorized that that could take another 50 years. That's how big it is. Now here's the main mystery. This monument was built during a time when metal tools and pottery had not been developed yet. So how was this built, why was it built, and what was it for? In our 6th spot, we have the domesticated dogs. The story of how we got dogs as pets is actually quite a weird one. Turns out we domesticated them by complete accident, or so that's what scientists claim. Basically, during the last ice age, ancient humans would give their meat scraps to dogs. This created a bond between the dogs and humans, as well as a sense of trust. They weren't all like, oh look how cute, I just want one by my side 24/7. No, they were like, here my dude, just eat my scraps. Oh, we're friends now? Cool. Now you may be like, why the hell would they share their food? They would have competed against each other. Well, humans can't only eat meat, so if they had some left over, they would share it. Eventually dogs realized that being by humans meant food, and that's how it all began. I'm just glad that it did because I'm a huge dog lover. Smash that like button if you are too. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Sakse Woman. It's the best I can say it. Located in Peru, the Sakse Woman is a series of strange stone walls made from 200-ton blocks of rock and limestone. Scientists originally believed that this structure was some sort of fortress, but now it's thought that it was used more symbolically. In fact, if you look at it from above, the walls seem to form the shape of a cougar head. Not only that, but close to the structure they actually found a bunch of underground catacombs and passageways. Is this somehow linked to this structure, or is it just a coincidence? Now, it was initially thought to be a fortress, but later on scientists were like, nah, no way. So the mystery is, why did they build this and for what purpose? Another mystery is how it was built. The stones fit together perfectly. In fact, not even a sheet of paper can fit in between the gaps. How did they do this, and how did they also transport those stones? Moving on to number 4, we have the pyramids. So let's take a trip back to ancient Egypt for a second. Back then, the pharaohs ordered pyramids to be built as tombs for them when they passed away. It took thousands of men and years to build these pyramids. Apparently, it took 100,000 men and 20 years to build the Great Pyramid of Giza. Pretty insane, right? So we know that the Egyptians were one of the first civilizations to believe in the afterlife. So I guess they went all out to ensure that they got there. It's still pretty incredible to think about all the time and effort that went into building the pyramid, and then they only used it for the dead. On top of that, how did they decide what shape to make them, and why were they so big and intricate? Surely we have theories, but there's no way to 100% know the reasoning behind it. In our 3rd spot, we have the Karnic Stones. Over in Karnic, France, there are thousands of standing stones that were placed there during the Neolithic period, about 12,000 years ago. There are 4 groups of these stones. They are then arranged in rows that spread over 4 kilometers. The taller stones are to the west, and they get shorter as you follow them east. The big mystery is, what the heck are these for? Why did the people back then create this structure? To this day, archaeologists don't know the significance behind these stones. Some say that they were burial site markers, kind of like a modern day headstone. Or maybe it was a place for religious gathering. Or they were astronomical markers. We still don't know for sure though. Coming in at number 2, we have Teotihuacan. This was one of the world's largest cities back in 600 AD. It was believed to have held around 200,000 citizens. Here's the thing though. To this day, no one knows who built the city or what happened to its citizens. But after their disappearance, the Aztecs lived among the ruins of the city. They were oblivious to the city's original architects, but they did worship them. Like I said, this city is very mysterious. There were no royal tombs or artworks pointing at who their leaders were. So, that's weird. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Roman dodecahedrons. This is a very mysterious ancient artifact that we don't know why it was built or what it was used for. There are actually 100 of these weird objects that were found. They are typically made of either stone or bronze. They have 12 sides with a small circle on each and pegs sticking out from the connecting corners. Some say maybe it was a candle holder, but that seems pretty intricate and elaborate just to hold a candle. Whereas others think it served as a religious or astrological item. But much like a bunch of the other stuff on this list, we don't know for sure, so it remains a big mystery.
Number 10 on this list is human tails. If we take a look at the animal kingdom, tails are a pretty common thing. In fact, most birds, mammals, reptiles, and even fish have tails. Humans, however, for the most part, don't. Well, most of us anyways. There is a rare mutation that humans can be born with an actual actual tail. It's actually believed that very early on, as a baby is being developed in the womb, there will be a tail attached to this child. It's a very small thing that will go away, but for some humans, it never does. This makes a lot of sense because it's believed that humans evolved from creatures that would have had tails. In fact, pretty much all monkeys have tails, so it makes sense that at one point or another, we also would have had these little things poking out of our backside. Unlike a lot of other entries on this list, this mutation isn't necessarily super dangerous. For most people, they go on to live totally normal lives just with a tiny little tail. Obviously, it's gotta be pretty bloody annoying though, because I feel like your entire life you'd just be perpetually sitting on your own tail, which would kinda suck. But there could also be some cool things with this too. Some people actually have the capability to move their own tail. Like they actually have control over the full thing. I don't think that they can swing off of trees or anything like that, but still, moving a tail around would definitely make for a pretty neat party trick.
Coming in at number 9, we have 51 Headless Vikings. Not one, but 51 skulls were found near the seaside town of Weymouth in the UK. The 1,000-year-old skulls were found first, and then their bodies located nearby. It seems that they were the remains of Vikings who were stripped nude and brutally executed. Imagine coming across 51 skulls, what a find. The skeletons had deep cuts to the skull, jaw and neck, which seems to suggest that the men had their heads roughly removed rather than by one clean stroke. Horrible. Coming into number 8, we have the First Leper. Leprosy is a disease that plagued humanity until we reached the point of near elimination in the year 2000. It is heavily referenced in the Bible, although it is not known where the disease came from. The earliest known case of leprosy was unearthed in 2009 when a 4,000-year-old skull was found in India. The skull demonstrated clear signs that the human had been infected with the disease. While leprosy is curable today, historically it tormented humans, and many of those who contracted it were shunned from society. The interesting thing about this skull is that it was buried, which is not common in Hindu culture. This leper, the first leper, may have been someone of importance. Coming into number 7, we have the Scotch Animal. What on earth does this skull belong to, and how did it end up frozen on ice in a Glasgow park? In March 2018, Karen Feeney found a skeleton while she was walking through a park in Camsolang. The creature seemed to still have its sharp, jagged teeth in place and was found with its jaw wide open and its skin stripped off. Fellaini posted the image to her Facebook where she wrote, "Okay, what we found on our walk to the park today. A skull of some sort of animal. Weird." Theories are that it could be from a fox skull, but even if it was, why on earth would it be skinned like that? Some Facebook commenters suggest the mystery animal skull might be the sign of a local cult. Coming into number 6, we have the double layer. In November 2018, a strange skull was found in China. It is roughly 16 centimeters in diameter and seems to contain 2 layers. A collector got in touch with a scientific researcher who carried out tests. Now, the brownish skull does not appear to be of human origin, and there is a deep speculation that it could have come from an alien race. We find something weird and we immediately turn to aliens, don't we? I mean... A lot of people are claiming that the skull is fake, but it seems that researcher Li Jianmin has held a seminar in Beijing and is raising the funds for a full DNA examination. Is this another hoax? At number 5, we have the horned ones. According to a news article written in 1916, horned human skulls were found in a burial mound in Sire, Bradford County, Pennsylvania. The ancient skeletons found were belonging to humanoids that were over 7 feet tall, which is pretty outrageous considering the skulls dated back to the 13th century when people were a lot shorter. The article hailed them as Chimung's predecessors. They claim that 68 skeletons had been found and that they all belonged to men who were around 40 years of age, again pretty old for the 13th century. Where these skeletons are now is anyone's guess. A lot of people think that they were removed as some kind of alien cover-up, others think that the story is nothing more than an urban legend. Coming into number 4, we have the curious crystals. Crystal skulls are a mystery that have stood the test of time and have fueled fierce debates and garnered obsessive interest from historians, archaeologists, and theorists. I'm not talking about any crystal skulls here. Of course, these days it's easy enough to manufacture a glass skull, but these are a select few that were seemingly and impossibly handcrafted in Mexico and Central America. It is thought that they came from an ancient Mesoamerican civilization, but some people vehemently believe that they came from the lost city of Atlantis. Some even believe that they were left on the earth by aliens who visited the Aztecs before the Spanish conquest. Many believe that these mysterious skulls have some kind of supernatural power. Josh Shapiro, the writer of a book called Mysteries of the Crystal Skulls, revealed that he thinks the skulls are, and I quote, a form of computer which are able to record energy and vibrations that occur around them. The skull will pictorially replay all events or images of the people who have come into contact with them, i.e. they contain the history of our world. Blimey. Coming into number 3, we have the Pixies. In February 2017, it was claimed that James Cornyn of Wilmington, North Carolina, found the remains of a pixie in a falcon's nest whilst exploring the Rocky Mountains. Further claims said that the tiny skeleton and surrounding bones were real. It is said that he was out exploring a falcon's nest when he made the magical and macabre discovery, but I will just say, a side note for all of you, like, don't ever go poking a bird's nest. That's pretty disruptive and disrespectful, and you could harm the bird. Maybe then you would deserve a good pecking from a falcon. Anyway, it was later revealed that the tiny body was the work of a professional hoax artist, Dan Baines. The remains are an incredible work of artistry though. Coming into number 2, we have the Peruvians. 3,000-year-old alien skulls were found in Peru in 1928, sparking the interest of ufologists. The unusual shape of the skulls, found in the desert peninsula of Paracas on the southern coast of Peru, led people to think that they could be from a strange and perhaps otherworldly race. Modern day researcher Brian Forrester said the mitochondrial DNA from the mother presented mutations unknown to man, primate or any other animal. The mutations suggested that we're dealing with a completely new human-like being, very distant from the Homo Sapiens, Neanderthals or the Denisovians. I'm not entirely sure it will fit into the known evolutionary tree. The researchers believe that they are from a subspecies of humans that lived between the Caspian and Black Sea and were forced to flee from their native homeland. 300 of the strange skeletons were found, and conspiracists will tell you that it's an evidence of an alien visit, although scientists are skeptical and remind us that we don't know anything about who and what came before us. New evidence is emerging all of the time. So speaking of new evidence, coming into number 1, we have the aliens of Antarctica. Or are they? Up until now, it has been believed that humans never lived in Antarctica and that the icy south was never touched by humans until explorers ventured into the tundra in the 1820s. However, recently, strange human-like remains were found in 2014. The 3 ancient skulls were unearthed by a hardy team of archaeologists, and oddly enough, they long predate the explorer era. These skulls were also elongated like those found in Peru. Here is a picture of one of the skulls, and here it is compared to a normal human skull. The skull is now shed doubt on our version of history and the notion that Antarctica was untouched. Researcher and archaeologist Damien Waters said, "I have to pinch myself every time just to know that I'm awake. I can't believe it. These skulls have quite a few other important physical characteristics that greatly set them apart from normal human skulls." I personally wonder, as the world heats up, what else we're going to find under the ice in Antarctica.
Kicking off the list at number 10, glowfish. I never had a fish tank growing up, but if I did, I probably wouldn't want any hybrid glowy fish bouncing around in there, that's for sure. I don't know. That's what lava lamps are for, no? That's a completely different vibe. You'd be doing this while you're trying to sleep, trying to dodge out glowfish. Back in 2012, while the world was otherwise, preoccupied with not dying or whatever was supposed to happen in 2012, Yorktown Technologies created a hybrid glowfish. They were first created out of zebrafish, but now there's a whole plethora of glowfish that you can purchase, not just the zebra kind. We got tiger barbs, we got rainbow shark, and betta. I don't know what betta is, but we got them, and they're glowy. We figured out how to make them glowy, I guess to hype up Avatar 2. I think that was supposed to come out back then. I don't see why we needed hybrid glowfish, but here we are. Bioluminescence is natural. We see octopus or deep sea fish that have it naturally, that's cool. But when it's not natural, you can tell, you know what I mean? It looks plasticky, it looks not right. Scientists in Singapore were originally aiming to modify fish to spot toxins in polluted water easier. But then on one hand, you're like, they're pretty mesmerizing. They're glowy, we like them, they're cute. Alan Blake, co-founder of said Yorktown Technologies, wanted them to glow only when near toxins. Yeah, this was back in 2003 when they first started. The guy wanted real life toxin notifications in the water. That's crazy. Oh, toxins, there we go. Good idea, but like, there's other ways, I think. Also, don't fish love shiny things? These guys would be lunched in like a matter of minutes. Today we're at a point where glowfish are being sold to houses for reasons. Do you want a glowfish? I wouldn't be able to sleep. I don't want any part of that. It doesn't affect them in any way. It doesn't hurt. Apparently their skin just changes. I don't know. That kind of feels like a big deal to me. I'd be like, what's going on? Help!
Coming in at number 9, we have eradicated all the competition. There used to be a bunch of other species of human-like animals. Like, I'm sure that many of you have heard of Neanderthals. There's some people who have Neanderthal DNA. So if there was a bunch of human-like beings that were walking around the same time as us, how were we able to become the ones who came out on top? Well, one of the theories is that we were the best at warfare. All of the early Homo sapiens would go to war with the other species that were around them, and they took everyone out. I mean, they had some advantages that the others didn't. For instance, there was suspicion that they had the ability to throw spears overhead, which used to be the deadliest form of attack. Other species didn't have the dexterity for this, and that meant that they were easily wiped out, and back then we took no prisoners. Coming in at number 8, we have they were fueled by meat. There's a lot of evidence that meat combined with fire was the deciding factor in seeing humans evolve to stronger beings. See, humans were eating meat before we were able to use fire in a controlled sense to cook it, but we were eating raw meat, and when you're eating tons of raw meat, there's a higher chance that you're going to consume bacteria and parasites. So eating meat wasn't the safest, and our bodies needed longer digestive systems to digest this meat safely. This costs more calories, which is a precious resource for early humans. Now, when we started cooking meat, it meant that we could eat more of it and evolved to have smaller digestive tracts and bigger brains. So early humans were meat machines that were hungry to cook and burn all of the breathing creatures around them. Coming at number 7, we have sucking it dry. Now, as much as meat was a valuable source, it was still hard to get at times, and hunting was never easy. Hunter-gatherers are thought to have gotten 80% of their calories from gathering, but the early humans that were in charge of scavenging the land to find food did find a way to get some protein into the diet, and that was through bones. Scavengers would often bring back bones of dead animals, and humans found out that cracking the bones open and sucking the marrow out of them was a great source of protein. Actually, it's believed that for a long time, bone marrow was the main source of protein for early man. That is kind of a gruesome image to think of. A human cracking open the skull of another animal and sucking the marrow out of it like a gothic Capri Sun. But back then, you didn't have the fine skills of a barbecue pitmaster. Sucking on some bones must have been delicious and a delicacy of its time. You would have to fight off other creatures just so you could taste that good marrow. Coming in at number 6, we have rub some dirt on it. You know that old saying, rub some dirt on it. That's supposed to be a sign of grit, something that sounds ridiculous, something that won't actually do anything for you and will probably make you feel even worse than when you first got hurt. Well, it turns out it might actually help. It's thought that early humans would actually take clay and rub it on their open wounds to try and heal them. Now, this sounds crazy. Why on earth would they do something like that? Well, they didn't do it just because they didn't know that much about medicine. It turns out that rubbing clay on a wound actually has some pretty strong healing properties. It would not only help the wound heal, but it would keep out parasites and bugs and stop the smell from attracting predators. That's crazy when you think about it. Not the fact that it actually works, but the fact that the saying rub some dirt on it actually has some medical backing. What about our other sayings like easy come, easy go? What does that even mean? Well, I know what it means, but does it mean something more? Coming in at number 5, we have they had no homes. Early humans would travel around constantly. They were what's called a nomad. They had no home and nowhere to come back to every day. Could you imagine that life now? Every day you gotta find a new landlord, and the next day you spend finding another landlord. In between that, you would stop at Burger King to eat and then move on because someone took your favorite spot. The reason for this was food. As we've already covered, the main source of food for early man was gathering and hunting. Both these things involve moving great distances to collect as much food as possible and chase down animals. Now, it wouldn't make sense to travel hundreds of miles away from your home to get food and then burn all those calories to get back. So you would just set up shop in a new place and keep going. But once we figured out agriculture, then we would grow food in one place and start breeding livestock. Then we started sitting down a lot more and hanging out for most of the day. Coming in at number 4, we are evolving faster. Early humans were too slow. It took them 5 million years just to go from rocks to iPhone 12. If I were in charge of all of this, we would already have robots that we can go on dates with and junk food that is way healthier than salad. But for real, there are some scientists that not only believe we are still evolving, but we are evolving faster. We could in fact be evolving 100 times faster than when we first discovered agriculture. This seems strange to me because it would seem that we don't need to evolve anymore because science is evolving for us, but that could be exactly why we're evolving at such a high pace. We are now exposing our body and ourselves to so many new things, new foods, new information, new chemicals, new climates. Some of us are even going into space. The body is now in hyperdrive just to try and keep up with everything we're putting it through. Coming in at number 3, we have Homo sapiens were creatures of love. I don't mean that in the sense that they were all about peace. No, not at all. We already covered how early humans might have gone out of their way to take out every other human-like thing on the planet. But they also went out of their way to mate with all the other human-like species. Many people today have traces of other species in their body, like Neanderthals or Homo erectus and many others. So it would seem that some of us would want war and the others just wanted love, man. Now, why did humans have such an open door policy when it came to procreation? Well, we still don't know that. And it might give another answer as to what happened to all these other species. They might have just been bred out of existence. There's a chance that Homo sapien DNA was just that strong. And these other dudes got pushed out, just like how today blue eyes and red hair are starting to disappear. Coming in at number 2, we have they would banish you. There is a ton of evidence that shows early humans were very social animals. Way before we even knew how to build fires to hang around, we were gathering in groups. I wonder what we used to hang around before fires and water coolers. Maybe it was like a pile of bones or really cool rock. But because humans have always been such social animals, being sent out on our own would have been one of the worst punishments that you could ever receive. This would put you at risk for several reasons. For one, it would strain your mental health. I know that seems like a silly thing to say for early man, but they would be able to feel the stress of being alone for a long time. This would put them at the risk of dying from other animals. You would have no one to look over your shoulder, and predators always look for the weak one that's separated from the pack. But this would also make it hard for you to get food. You would have to scavenge all by yourself, and it would be extremely hard to hunt. And coming in at the number 1 spot, we have the age of metals. There is a time in prehistory when early man discovered metal. This was pretty simple metal, but as you can imagine, back then this would have been like discovering the nuclear bomb. So there was a short period of time where there were certain tribes that had access to metal, and other tribes were literally still using stones and sticks. Now, what do you think happened in that time? Do you think that they were nice and they went around showing everyone how to use these new metals so they could make the whole world a better place and we would one day all surf the internet? No way, Jose. During that time, there was massive bloodshed as tribes who had the edge knew what metal was and how to use it, and they would use it to attack the more primitive tribes. I mean, every time there's a technological advancement today, the same thing happened.